We've learned about how the Romans ate and dressed, but how did the Romans live? What were their homes like? If you were a farmer in ancient Rome, you would live in a villa. Unlike what your intuition might tell you, a villae was not a wealthy dwelling, but rather just a farmhouse. A large family house for the master and his family, called villa dominica, was normally sided by pars rustica, or farm buildings for the animals and the people taking care of the animals. Sometimes even a pars fructuaria would be present. That would be an orchard of fruit trees and buildings for making wine and olive oil. All in all, it appeared like something very similar to what is called a hacienda in Latin America. Even in the city, common people didn't have a glamorous life. They would all live packed in apartment buildings called insulae insularum. This is the same word that in Latin normally means island. These buildings were small, cold, and damp in the winter, and steamy hot in the summer. Sometimes they were large enough to house an entire city block, but that didn't mean more comfortable living. It just meant a greater concentration of people, sometimes with an entire family in one room. The insulae were poorly built, and because of that they often collapsed. Other times they simply burned down or were flooded by the river Tiber. The ground floor was often dedicated to shops called tabernae tabernarum, while the apartments would be found on the upper floors, up to 6 or 7 stories. Counterintuitively, the uppermost floors were the less desirable ones because of safety issues. They were usually the cheapest. Often they didn't even have running water, and that meant no bathrooms were present either, so Romans had to leave their apartments in order to use latrinae latrinarum, which were public bathrooms in the street, and it wasn't unusual for them to throw refuse out of their windows, with all the associated sanitary issues you can imagine. Not far from these buildings were the homes of the very wealthy. They were called domus domus, a single-family dwelling. These houses might include a taberna facing the street in order to conduct business, or to store items not suitable for the house. The door or entrance, ostium, was always from the street. Inside the house, you would first see a foyer or vestibule, vestibulum vestibuli, where the owner would greet visitors. This would lead to the internal part of the house, atrium atrii, through a small hallway, fauces faucium. The atrium had enclosed rooms on all sides, and a compluium complui, an inward-sloping open roof to provide both light and shade. This open roof also had the purpose of collecting precious rainwater into a little pool, impluvium impluvii. Sometimes a small altar called lararium lararii was present, with the house protector gods Lares. A tablinum tablini would serve both as the study room for the pater familias, the head of the house, or as a reception room. The house would have a lovely internal garden, peristilium peristilii, often decorated with a colonnade, porticus porticus, to help air circulation on those hot summer days. Here is where the owner would grow flowers such as roses, rosa rosae, and white lilies, lilium lilii. A large room was dedicated to dining and entertaining, triclinium triclinii. A kitchen, culina culinae, would be present for cooking, and several bedrooms, cubiculum cubiculi, would accommodate family and guests. These were usually small, just the necessary space to accommodate a bed. A larger house would also have room for a vegetable garden, hortus horti, to grow items essential for cooking. The interior walls were plastered and decorated with beautiful paintings of mythology or countryside, while floors were often covered with mosaics, opus vermiculatum, made with small tiles, tessera tesserae. Surprisingly, there was not much furniture, with this being limited to couches to relax or have dinner, as well as tables and chests to store things. When the weather was particularly cold or damp, these homes were made comfortable by the use of braziers, foculus foculi, designed to hold hot coals, which could be moved conveniently from room to room if necessary. In order to light the house candles, lamps and torches were used. The most beautiful examples of domus, extremely well preserved, can be admired today in the town of Pompeii. Villa of the Mysteries, the House of Menander, and the House of the Faun are great examples. And with that, we have a better sense of how the ancient Romans lived in their homes. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.